Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Today is a real big day for us here on The Right Side. We have with us the United States congressional candidate for Kansas 3rd District, Adrienne Vallejo Foster. Mrs. Foster, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity, especially the day before 4th of July. This is a very exciting time.
It is, and it's going to be an interesting Independence Day, I think, for a lot of us in the country, given what's going on out there. So, Mrs. Foster, this is, a time for us to talk about the issues that are important to the 3rd District in Kansas. Lead things off. A couple of weeks ago, Mississippi and Tennessee adopted and passed legislations that would prohibit the abortions of babies that are prenatally diagnosed as having Down syndrome. Interesting laws. If you're elected, would you try to pursue similar laws or perhaps ban abortion altogether in the state? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my stand on abortion is really, I don't believe in it for any reason whatsoever. I am pro-life. I support the inalienable God-given right to life of every preborn child. I also do not have any exceptions to the rule, no matter how a child was conceived. And I've been very strong on that my entire life, and that's why my stance is about representing family, faith, and freedom. And so that's I would definitely support in Congress the sanctity of life and protecting it from womb to tomb.
Excellent. Good. And what about Planned Parenthood, Mrs. Foster? Are you interested in pursuing the defunding of Planned Parenthood or any kind of restrictions on them?
I am not a fan of Planned Parenthood at all. None of our taxpayer dollars should go to them to support any abortions. I know what they like to say is they, are protecting the women's reproductive rights. I think that's very interesting as we are in this COVID-19 world, and they're requiring us to wear a mask, and because they're trying to protect us from them, and everything wrong about it. They want to protect their own bodies, but yet they're telling us now, we need to be protected from them, so wear a mask. It's very contradictory.
Yep. I agree. So in the upcoming primary election, you're running against 4 Republicans. You've got Amanda Adkins, Mike Beeler, Tom Love, and Sarah Hart-Weir. We've reached out to all of them. You were the first and your campaign was very quick to respond. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. And what is it, do you think, that, distinguishes you from the rest of the Republican field?
That I'm the only one that's been elected at a local level. I was the mayor of Roland Park in our last recession. I was on city council prior to that. I was in an appointed position with Governor Brownback over Hispanic and Latino affairs. And 14 months prior to running for Congress, I was one of 10 across the United States in the Trump administration, appointed as the Region 7 advocate. On top of that, before I even got into public service, I was my own business owner. I was a freelance paralegal for 13 years and working on both plaintiff and defense side. And then I went into the hospital system and worked for both St. Luke's Health System and Shawnee Mission Medical Center, working with patient financial services and seeing firsthand how insurance companies, both from the private sector and public sector, how they didn't want to pay your bill and what kind of excuses that could be. And then also working one-on-one to find out how many people were underinsured or uninsured, and how the hospitals like St. Luke's and Shawnee Mission provide financial assistance to them, and how individuals can get some care in healthcare. And so I'm sure we'll talk about healthcare down the road, and because I've got a lot of great ideas on how we can revamp that by getting the government out of our lives.
Excellent. That's always music to my ears. Whenever somebody says, let's get the government out of our lives, I think that's a good thing. Switching gears just a little bit to the current, you mentioned COVID. Kansas population is approximately 3 million people, and less than 1% of the population has been touched by the COVID-19 virus.
Mhm.
Many Kansans, and I believe me, and I know there's two sides to this, but there's a lot of Kansans who think that our economy should never have been shut down based on those low numbers. And in fact, I run into a lot of people that question the whole definition of the term pandemic. You know, to them, a pandemic is something that affects the vast majority of the population, that, you know, it's crippling the entire country, or at least a large portion of it. And they look around and they think, well, wait a minute, I don't even think we're in a pandemic. Why are we making a big deal of this and not just taking care of the medically fragile, washing hands? Clearly, the elderly need to be taken care of. But my question is this, and in two parts. What's your assessment of how Governor Kelly has handled the COVID-19 issue? Specifically, do you think that the Kansas economy should have been shut down?
I don't believe in a one size fits all. So we just saw in the last couple, 24, 48 hours, Governor Kelly mandating masks. Well, there are many parts of this in our state that have zero COVID positive cases. What we're not hearing right now is, okay, we have 100 new positive cases, but is anyone sick? You know, what majority of those COVID positive cases are actually people sick? And I have two neighbors who work at the hospital, and I said, hey, how's the emergency room? How's your COVID unit? And they're like, we had to shut down the two COVID units that we have because we don't have any patients.
Yep.
And that had stymied all these other elective procedures that were not able to happen. And people are getting delayed cancer diagnosis or other diagnosis that could have been, caught earlier on. And so we're going to see the unintended negative consequence of that coming down the line. And if I had a family member that had been delayed testing to find out that they had cancer and then delayed cancer treatment, I would be livid.
Yeah. What about school? If you're elected, what about schools and the students going back to school in the post-COVID world? Would you be in support and in favor of opening up the schools, extracurricular activities, schools, theater, sports, theaters, things like that?
So I currently have one high schooler and one college student.
Mm-hmm.
And my high schooler spent his last 3 months of school, his freshman year of school, doing Zoom. And did he learn more or less? I thought it was very interesting that they could get they go to school usually at 8:30 in the morning and get out at 3:30. And boy, they were starting school at 9 a.m. on Zoom and they were done by noon. It was amazing. I was like, what do they do with all the rest of the school year?
Yeah.
But I do believe that they need that social interaction, that they need to be with their classmates. My son was like, come on, we're not part of the vulnerable population.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know many kids that had like juvenile diabetes or anything like that would make them vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept on asking, why are we doing this? We're not going to go see grandma. My mom's 90 years young. But she's definitely part of the vulnerable population. And we wouldn't think about going to see her and, carrying anything to her. So these kids need to be in school. I also have a college student who didn't get to finish his freshman year of college. And he also played sports. He's on the Fort Hays State soccer team. And so they're not doing conditioning and he's getting a little fat, and we're trying to get him active here. But also my high schooler plays soccer as well. And they were getting ready to go back into sports. And we just got an email last night saying, nope, it's been delayed. We're not doing anything for the rest of the summer. And that's not good for kids either, health-wise or socially wise. The kids need to go back to school. They're not part of the vulnerable population. And if they are, then parents should have the option to figure out what they can do for their child.
Very well. Okay.
It's called personal responsibility. It's a novel thing that Democrats don't know. Don't think that we can make our own choices and that we're smart enough. They're smarter than us.
So the Second Amendment, Kansas, the population of Kansas, our citizenry is highly interested in the protection of the Second Amendment.
They've been trying to take and strip all of our liberties, right? Our right to go to church and our rights to take guns away. Now they want to defund the police. I mean, so they want to take our guns away. They want to take our God away, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, and they want to rule. So I will do everything to protect our Second Amendment right, to be able to protect our families, to protect our property. I just find it so sad about the couple who was in St. Louis this week who was trying to defend their home from thugs and rioters from going onto their property.
Mm-hmm.
And they had every right to protect their home, just like my parents did growing up in Wyandotte County in the urban core off 10th and Central. My dad had a gun. You know, I'm a gun holder. I'm an NRA member. And we have every right to protect our family from anyone who's trying to come into our homes and take our property.
What about, you know, you and I and the rest of the state look at the news with regards to the, you know, there's no other way to describe it really except to say anarchy, the mobs in the streets, the destruction of statues and memorials that represent our past history and so forth. How could you, as a member of the Congress from Kansas 3rd District, respond to that or encourage the governor to, God forbid, if something like that happens in Kansas, what would be your point of view on that? For example, would you be in favor of calling in the National Guard quickly, or what? What would be your take or response in support of whatever action might be taken in case something like that were to happen?
Well, I can tell you what I wouldn't do, and that is this. I wouldn't defund our police. I would support our police in our community. I would, you know, I'm shy as a truck. So I've always worn my heart on my sleeve, and I've always just laid it out straight for people. Yes.
I looked at your website, and it talks about, you know, your initiatives and your reasons why you're running and so forth. Today in the House of Representatives, there are several high-profile members who are, again, members of what I call the New Democratic Socialist Party. And they've literally turned away, in my opinion, from the ideals and the philosophies of our founders and our framers. So the question is, you know, what's your political opinion or assessment of the likes of people like Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Nancy Pelosi, and so forth? And
Sharice Davids.
And yes, please, let's talk about Sharice as well. I call her the ghost. I have not seen her lately, so yeah, let's talk about her as well.
Well, all of them, and we have to throw Sharice in there, and the reason why is because she votes 97% of the time with AOC and with Nancy Pelosi, and the only reason it's not 100% is because Nancy has told her it's okay to vote against this one or two things because your district would more likely align with those votes. Mm-hmm. And so it's all about getting reelected. Mm-hmm. And so Bernie, Nancy, Sharice, they're all about socialism, taking our liberties away, stripping them one by one. And it used to be they kind of would hide it. But now it's just, mm-hmm. you know, right out front. You can't go to church. Governor Kelly's in on it too. She's a Democrat. She might as well be thrown in with all of them as well.
Yep.
You know, a Good Friday to close all the churches down, saying no one can go to church on Easter Sunday, I was livid. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you had asked before, you know, how am I different? Well, I'll tell you. I said I was shy as a truck, and I always do a press release of some sort outlining what Sharice is doing, usually every other week. Sometimes it's every week, depending on what she is co-sponsoring. But also Governor Kelly's the same way. When she came out and closed our churches, I was the only person that spoke out against on the news, on a press release, that closing our churches was not right. It was not constitutional. And I will take that very same fight to Washington, D.C. And you will never have to guess where I stand on anything because I will put it out there. I will take your call. Sharice has not been doing her job. She's been sitting at home, and she doesn't live but 5 minutes away from my home. 5 minutes mm-hmm. away. Mm-hmm. And she has been sitting at home, and she's been collecting our check that us taxpayers are paying her, $175,000. And she's sitting there, And all she wants to do is take our God, our family, and our freedoms away. And I'm there to unseat her any day.
Well, your passion is obvious, and you've got a charisma that's coming through loud and clear right now about that. And it's good to hear because, I encounter again that when I talk to Republicans in the state, there is a frustration because it seems as if a lot of our Republican leadership is just quiet and isn't vocal enough about, whatever issue. I think lately they don't feel they're vocal enough about these mobs and the riots in the street and quelling the chaos and so forth. But beyond that, it's good to hear someone who's willing to be transparent, and that, the citizenry will be able to reach out and actually get a hold of you and actually see you. Because I tell you, I've lived in Olathe, Kansas for 30 years. I've never seen Sharice Davis on TV. I mean, I'm sure she is, but she doesn't go out of her way to address the citizenry, in my opinion, enough.
Well, she has been hanging out with her best friend, Quentin Lucas, on the Missouri side, Mayor Lucas, and Cleaver. Now, we didn't elect Cleaver, and we surely didn't elect Quentin Lucas. And that's who she talks to and who are her bodyguards, because Nancy Pelosi knows that they can't trust her to go out by herself. She can't even do a town hall meeting or anything like that. We saw when she was running against Kevin Yoder that the only time she agreed to do a debate was 4 days before the actual election. And so we will pull her out. We will get her on the table, and we will make sure that she does a debate. And if she doesn't, we'll just continue to call her out. I remember the chambers of commerce in Wyandotte County and Johnson County. They all wanted to see that. She canceled those. They were upset with her. Oh, she gets on the small business committee. Oh, we want her back in. Okay. I mean, politics is, as usual, needs to go away. And I know a lot of the people that I'm running against, they want to wait for a poll to see, should they say something? Should they not say something? I don't need a poll. I know where I stand.
Good to hear. Yeah, it's crazy. I would echo your call to Sharice Davids to debate early and debate often, really. I mean, a few. Not just one and not 2 weeks before the election. I would call on her to do the same thing, and I echo your strong opinion about that. On your website, you talk about term limits and a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget. What would the term limits be? What would they look like?
I would say for the House of Representatives, no more than 4 terms or 8 years. If you can't get something done by then you need to go. I think that we've had too many people there who have retired, who've only had their only job in their entire life as being in Congress. Same on the Senate side. I think 2 terms, 12 years is a long time to serve. And I know that the cons on that, some say, oh, well, the lobbyists will just wait you out and they'll get what they eventually want. But we have to change that paradigm. And I think that we've seen too long what term limits do not look like, right? Here we have them. And so we really need to try something different and see if it works. I mean, honestly.
Excellent. That's good. We probably got a time for a few more questions before our time is up here. I want to get to the, first of all, what I'm, I think it's impressive that we have here a second generation Hispanic-American who is a Republican, who knows President Trump and is familiar with his ideals and his philosophies about our American immigration system and President Trump's efforts to reform it with a secured southern border, a refined definition or a revamping of the lottery visa system, et cetera. So do you, I think I know the answer, but do you stand with, as a Hispanic American, it's always, I think, a good sign when we have someone who stands with President Trump on his views of immigration, because I still, I'm a white guy with English, Irish ancestry, but I still think, my grandparents came from Ireland. I mean, I'm not that far removed. And I still believe that America has the best opportunity for the American dream. I know you again, on your website, you talk about your mom and dad, 12 siblings, your dad in World War II as a true patriot. Don't you think that America has the best immigration possibilities and the American dream is still alive in this country?
Absolutely. And the United States has the most generous immigration policy we accept more individuals from other countries than any other country in the world. So we have a very generous immigration system. Now, what happened was, as we all know, that when we had President Obama, he got rid of our entire borders, not only to the south, the north, the east, and the west, but it was unleashed to everyone and anyone. And it is an honor and a privilege to be a U.S. citizen, and we should never give it away for free. I do not believe in amnesty. And so we need to secure our borders. And when early on, when Donald J. Trump was running, when he was candidate Donald J. Trump, I was asked by the Kansas City Star, I believe it was Steve Rose, God bless Steve, and he had asked me, hey, I hear you're a supporter of Donald Trump. How can you endorse someone who doesn't like Mexicans? My grandparents, like as you said, immigrated here from Mexico in early 1910. They were fleeing the Mexican Revolution. They came legally here through the railroad. And I believe we have a very generous immigration process, but it is broken and it needs to be fixed. And in order to start to fix it, we have to secure our borders, and not only our Mexico border, but also our Canadian border. Not many people talk about our Canadian border, where many people come in illegally. And so not many people talk about, our Florida border as well. So we need to secure our borders, not only to the north, the south, but the east and the west. And we also have these deferred, called DACA students, deferred action of childhood arrivals. We have, I think there's about 9 million. I think there probably is really about 12 to 15 million, but those that are registered. I think if we can provide a path to not citizenship, but to a legal status via maybe a green card, that is something. But everyone's going to be different. We need to ensure that they have a job, that they can be self-reliant, that they're not going to be reliant on the government, and that they have not committed any felonies as well. So,
right. Okay.
And I only want to bring up one thing, because there's a gentleman that I'm running against who continues to state that he is a Kansan, when for 26 years lived in Florida because he thought his vote counted more there. And in order to be a Florida resident, you have to live there at least 6 months and 10 days. You have to have your cards registered there, and you have to vote there. And he's now only been a resident for probably 90 days. And in that one law that I will definitely want to encourage our state legislature to do is, in order to run for U.S. Congress in the state of Kansas, you only need to be a registered Kansan for 30 days. And that is absolutely wrong. So I will be supporting amending that. And you need to at least be a resident, I would think, for 3 to 5 years, not 30 days.
Sure. Yep. Okay. Farmers in our rural community, with regards to them and the infrastructure, what would you pursue to help our farmers?
So I had the privilege to actually travel with 24 farmers last August when I was being the Region 7 advocate. So I got to travel with 24 farmers across the state and see firsthand all the hats they have to wear. I was amazed. First of all, they have to be biologist, horticulturalist, meteorologist. They have to figure out what field to plant in this year or next season. And so I have a great respect for farmers. And I know our district has, in Miami County and parts of Wyandotte County are rural. And so I have a great appreciation for them, but I have a greater appreciation for our entire state and all of our farmers. I was able to talk with them about how they felt about the USMCA agreement that the president was working on back then. I also had the privilege to work on to actually get rid of Waters of the USA, which was an Obama overreaching regulation that not only affected our farmers, but our local municipalities and any of our home builders, where there was any open trenches that would eventually get to some creek. And so we were able to talk with them and see firsthand what their pain points were. And so as a U.S. Congresswoman, with a small rural footprint, I would definitely be a huge advocate and ensure that government wasn't overreaching with overburdensome regulations and getting and interrupting their business.
Very good. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than what Mayor Bloomberg said about just putting a seed in the ground and watering it, for sure. Remember that? Yeah. It's a lot different, Mayor, than that. So we're at the end, and I want to give you a chance, Mrs. Foster, to talk about, just your Reader's Digest version about your passion for the 3rd District of Kansas, what you intend to bring to government, and what you intend to do and help with the citizenry of this district in Kansas, please.
Right. Well, I can tell you that, we're living in very challenging times. Many of our nation's leaders are feeding the chaos as our cities burn. In recent weeks, we were arrested for attending church, but not arrested for torching a church, right?
Yeah.
The tyranny that is taking place in our country is led by organized anarchists who want to destroy our founding values, which I stand for, of family, faith, and freedom. Mm-hmm. And everything is just pretty noisy. The Democrats want to continue making us angry, keeping their population angry, so that they will go and vote against President Trump. So there's a lot at stake here in 2020. We need to make the choice for economic growth, pro-America trade policies, dismantling the deep state, and continuing to dismantle bureaucracy and the swamp. The alternate is not acceptable. Defending freedom is not going to be easy. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's hard work. It's inconvenient. There's a price to uphold and defend. We hold dear. It requires sacrifice, courage, bold leadership, all the things that I can do. And I promise my constituents that if they elect me as their next Congresswoman, that I will fight hard for them every day. I will represent them. I will show up for work, okay? Voting proxy or ridiculous. Handing over your vote. We didn't vote in whoever Sharice Davids handed off her vote to. That's not right. Take back that $175,000 we're giving her. Mm-hmm. So I pledge that I will defend and stand by our Constitution, and I want the people to hold me accountable, and I will listen to them, and that is what I will do as your next Congresswoman in the 3rd Congressional District.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the right side with Doug Billings, and you've just heard from Adrienne Vallejo Foster, a United States candidate for Congress in the Kansas 3rd District. Mrs. Foster, I really appreciate you and the campaign taking time to be with us today on the right side. Thank you very much, and good luck in the campaign.
Thank you, Doug. God bless.
God bless you. Thank you. Good night, everybody.